Well, welcome back. We're Brian and Jennifer Harvey, and we're so glad that you're joining us for session 3 for the Operation Thriving Marriage Small Group Study. And we're just about halfway through the study now. Thank you for taking the time to invest in your marriage and also for allowing us to be a part of that investment. And as we said in week 1, we truly believe that thriving marriages lead to thriving families, which lead to thriving communities that can change the world to the glory of God.
So last week we talked about that first little fox that can ruin a marriage, misunderstanding God's purpose for marriage. And we summarize that purpose as marriage isn't about happiness, it's about holiness. And we talked about 3 different ways we look at that. We talked about experiencing God's love and expressing God's love and extending God's love. So that experiencing God's love, that permanent, fulfilling love that you get in marriage that you don't get in any other relationship. And then expressing God's love, that becoming more like Jesus, and then representing God to the world around you and extending his love.
And before we start to talk about those little foxes, we'd like you to discuss this question. What is your favorite team?
So mine is the Detroit Red Wings. Go Wings.
And mine, Chip and Joanna Gaines. Woo! Go Team Gaines, right? Come and renovate my house.
So take a moment, pause this video, and talk about that question. What is your favorite team?
So that second little fox is when you don't know or you don't understand how you function as one. And this is something that we like to call team marriage in the most positive of terms. So think about those teams that you just talked about, whether it's your favorite sportings team or you see things on TV like a medical team or a legal team, maybe a work team that you've experienced or a volunteer team or a ministry team. Those teams are only successful if they're able to go ahead and function as one. Now, of course, each member of that team has their own role on the team. They trust their teammates will fulfill the other roles on the team. And together, through working hard in their role and trusting their teammates, they're successful in meeting their goals, whatever they are. And if they don't diligently fulfill their roles or they don't trust their teammates, they're ultimately going to fail. And we don't want that to happen to you, and we don't want that to happen to your marriage. You know, the Apostle Paul said the same thing about Jesus's church in 1 Corinthians chapter 12. Paul compares the church to the body, with each part functioning and working together to fulfill God's purposes. So it's true for your favorite teams, it's true for the church, and it's also true for our marriages. We can only fulfill our purpose if we work together. The difference in marriage is that while teams function as one, in marriage, you actually become one. You read about that a bit in chapter 3, and we discussed that last time. This week, we're going to dig deeper into how we build that oneness in our marriages.
So today, as you talk about that idea that Jen mentioned of team marriage, this misunderstanding of what it means to be one in marriage, I think it's important to note, that's kind of like the baby of the first little fox. Because that first little fox we talked about was misunderstanding God's purpose for marriage. It's not about happiness, it's about holiness. Yet often we see couples in crisis, they've got this return on investment idea of marriage. Like, am I getting what I want or what I need out of this marriage? And that creates obviously a lot of struggle and crisis in marriage. Almost every couple that we've seen that's been in crisis has not understood this idea of presuming goodwill. See, it's important. This is the first tool in your toolbox to build your team marriage. It's presuming goodwill, presuming that your spouse is not doing things to destroy the marriage, presuming that they're doing things to help, even though it doesn't feel like it. It's oftentimes you're going to experience things, you're going to feel things, and your spouse will do something that it just doesn't make sense to you. The difference there is so odd and strange to you. You think, why would you do that? Why are you doing this thing? And couples that don't understand this oneness, don't understand God's purpose in marriage, will start saying, you're wrong, you're messing up our marriage. Now, once you presume that they are not trying to ruin the marriage, that changes the conversation. we're not saying don't have the conversation about things that upset you, but rather presume goodwill. Presume that what they're doing is actually trying to make the marriage better. They're not trying to make things bad. An easy example of this, of course, would be a spouse that works late hours. A spouse that's working late, the spouse at home, taking care of the home, maybe taking care of children or whatever's going on at home, can think, my gosh, they don't want to be home. They don't want to be with me. They are ruining the marriage because they're so focused on themselves and their career. But then the other way to look at that is presuming goodwill. The spouse working all those hours wants what's best for the marriage because that increased income, those hours, perhaps that overtime, is providing for things the family needs. When you look at it from that perspective, it's not you're trying to ruin the marriage, but you're presuming goodwill. That's going to change the conversation because then you can say, I know you're not trying to hurt me. I know you're not trying to make things difficult for me, but here's my experience. See the difference in that? When you walk in, why are you ruining this? That changes things. But when you walk, I know that you want what's best for us, but my experience is different. And it all starts with presuming goodwill. You need to think that your spouse is trying to make your marriage better, that your spouse is trying to do what's best for you as a couple. And when you presume that goodwill, all the other things you're going to talk about, all the other areas in life are going to be so much smoother. Presuming goodwill is the first key to building your team marriage, to building that oneness that God intends for you in your marriage and to fulfill God's purposes in your marriage.
This week, you will continue learning how to develop your team marriage by learning to embrace your differences and developing a fuller definition of love. And we'll see you next time.